So guys, last time on Remove Before Race, we tested out the Facelift C43 Coupé, and we found it to have that formula of duality that you find in most modern AMGs at the moment, being part Mercedes-Benz and part AMG exactly when you need it to be. But one of the main questions that came out before that review and in the aftermath was, what is that car like compared to the E53 Coupé? And among other questions, we've come to answer that today. So what is the E53? Because many of you will remember that not too long ago, there was an E43, but this is not that car. The E43 was the same formula of drivetrain as the C43. So it had the V6 bi-turbo engine paired with a normal 4MATIC system. That's not what this car is. This is actually the first ever hybrid AMG. So Mercedes have a brand called EQ, which is their total electric brand. And what this car does is take a bit of that EQ technology and pair it to an inline 6.3 litre modified by AMG. And in that sense, this is now becoming part of that family that was started in concept first by the AMG Project ONE Hypercar, and it is now a growing family. You can expect that kind of technology to now come into the upcoming A45S coming next year, as rumoured, and that car in particular has had its drivetrain, apparently, if rumours are to be believed, designed and built by Brixworth, where the Project One and the F1 car was built as well. So the naysayers always start with, why does the E53 even exist? It's just dilution of the AMG brand. You've just slapped an AMG badge on top of a normal Mercedes-Benz. To which I say, we now have a massive gap between the E400 at 328 brake horsepower and the E63S monster at 612 brake horsepower. And we've never had such a big gap before, and it's a gap that needs to be filled. And that gap could be filled in one of two ways. We could either do it the way it was always done in the past, with say an E500, which has been developed solely by Mercedes-Benz, very nice in a straight line, very nice for luxury, but if you even dreamt of taking a corner or putting the car in manual, you should wake up and apologize. Or you could have a car like this, which has been developed by AMG. The brakes are from AMG, the suspension's from AMG, the engine has been tuned by AMG, all the software, everything has been tinkered at a Falterbach, and it's got thousands of miles on the Nürburgring. I know which one I would want. So when you see these entry-level AMGs, I don't want you to be like the sheep out there. I want you to ask the real question. Is it a good car to drive? Has it hit the nail on the head for what the purpose of the car is? And that is a point that we should be very critical about, and we will be. But one better question that I would like to ask is, why isn't there an E63S Coupe? And I know a lot of you have asked that question as well. I mean, that would be a great thing to see, wouldn't it? You could have, say, very similar design to the current E63 with a nice wide front end. You would have that 612 brake horsepower, maybe some rear wheel steer. But then you start to realize, in a coupe form, this is sounding very, very similar to the AMG GT 4-door. And if I'm going to weigh up which one of those two I want, I definitely want the GT 4-door more. So maybe that is the reason. Very similar price, very similar performance, but I would prefer to have an extra arrow in the quiver of the AMG GT family rather than an E63 Coupe, as nice as it would be. I still wouldn't say no to one, mind you. So as things stand right now, this is likely the most powerful E-Coupe that we are going to see. So let's hope it's good. So let us start now with the design of this new E-Coupe family in general anyway. You can see that it's really moved on from the previous car. In my opinion, it's actually the most handsome of all the MB coupes, certainly in this standard form. I won't compare it to the C63S Coupe with its extra large cartoonish arches, which is probably the coolest looking one of the lot, but generally it's really handsome. And with the E53 in mind in particular, you've of course got those entry-level AMG flavors all around the car. It's a signature look for the entry-level cars now. The first thing that hits you is the twin blade grille for the entry-level AMGs. You'll see this grille, of course, on the 43, as you saw. You'll also see it on the upcoming A35 that we're going to do a walk around of soon once it's unveiled. There's a little teaser of that car for you. It is going to look absolutely gorgeous. Sorry, back on point. I get easily distracted. You've also got, as with the C43, aerodynamic winglets on the front apron here, and you've got little satin chrome design highlights all over the front. All of this is done on all the entry-level AMG, so it all carries across the family. On the side, we've got specially designed 5-spoke lightweight wheels specifically for the 53 series. You'll see them on the 43s as well, and oddly enough, they're on the new GLE, which we're going to be doing a walk around of at Paris. They look really good to me. These are the pick of the bunch, especially with the two-tone diamond cut and black. Now, the rear is my absolute favorite part of this particular car. Whenever I've seen even a standard version on motorways recently, I always double back to look at it. Poor owners of the new CLS, I think this is 2 times, if not 3 times better looking. And I wonder what this rear end would have looked like on the CLS. In fact, I will explore that when we take on the CLS 53. But this rear end is just gorgeous. The round pipes harken back to the previous 63 generation of AMGs. A nice little nod to those and really gives this car a powerful presence. Of course, the little spoiler helps on the rear as well. One thing I am disappointed about though, is that although it's got all this new stuff from the current entry-level AMGs, like the C43, it's not got its own diffuser on the rear, which is unique to it. It's just your run-of-the-mill AMG line, whereas the C43 gets a gorgeous one, really similar to the 63. The other thing I absolutely love are the rear lights. The E-Class series in particular gets this stardust effect, as Mercedes call it, and it really glitters and it gives it a glow, especially when it's on. That just looks really premium. Now, the drivetrain of the 53s is why I've been really excited to drive them. I've never driven a 53, and as I've said on Instagram, I couldn't wait to do it because it's totally different to what we've had before. It's the first hybrid AMG. So the engine in this is the M256. It's an inline 6 3-litre turbo engine, but the turbo in this is not traditional turbocharging, and I will get onto that. Let's first deal with the hybrid bit. So the reason that this is a hybrid is the car runs on a 48-volt electrical system, and it's that system that's allowed Mercedes-AMG to put into this car an EQ boost starter alternator. Now that is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a starter motor paired with an alternator in an electric motor, and it sits in between the engine and the 9-speed transmission. Now I mentioned the car is turbocharged, so this has got a traditional gas turbocharger, a large turbocharger, but it's also got an electric auxiliary turbocharger. And what that does is give an extra 21 brake horsepower and 250 Newton meters of torque by that little turbo alone. The power thus sits at 429 brake horsepower with 520 Newton meters of torque. So it is a powerful engine. So I'm quite interested to see what it feels like, especially with this electric motor paired to it. But now let's go and have a look inside and see what the interior is like. So my friends, welcome to the gorgeous interior of the new E Coupe. Specifically, of course, this is our E53 interior, and it is absolutely gorgeous. It's giving me flashbacks in terms of driving position and the whole layout of the AMG GT 4-door. Of course, main difference being this center console bit, but it looks so premium. Immediately this, if you're asking the question, this versus C43, this is on another level, even with the interior that you guys know that I hate, which is your standard black with red stitching. Because it's Napa leather in this car and it's not the cheap Artico stuff, it just looks another level. And of course you can order other interior colors in the E53. You've got a lovely black and red and a black and tan, which both look absolutely gorgeous. They would be my pick either or. And all in all, you really get an almost S-Class like look here, which is great. So let's go through some of this new interior. Of course, it's a massive, massive step forward from the previous E Coupe. Pretty much blitzes that car in every single category. Now, of course, this is very similar to what you would have seen in my E63 review as well. So nothing too different, but I'm going to go through some of the basic stuff anyway. Of course, you've got the brand new AMG steering wheel, which is also now, by the way, in the E63, which I will be showing you on the AMG Road Trip 2018 on the channel, probably in F1 Mike's own hammer. So stay tuned for that. But yes, all E-classes since June 2018 have gotten the new steering wheel. That includes the E53. It's a really great steering wheel. The touch buttons are really easy to use. The one on the right controls your main driver screen on the right. The one on the left controls the command screen on the left. So it's very easy to understand once you get to using it. Now in the UK, we only get the leather steering wheel. There's no dynamic option, whereas in Germany there is. You also don't get any carbon fiber option in the UK, where you do have that in Europe. This particular trim, not a fan of this silver one, but you do have another option for a black trim with gloss black in the middle here, which looks okay. The best one in my opinion is having this black ash wood on the entire car. That looks really, really good. Now, apart from the lovely steering wheel, the next thing that hits you is of course the screens, and they're the same as what we saw in the E63. The designs are a bit different in the 53, so I'll walk you through those now. You've got what I have first here, which is progressive, which is quite similar to the 63. You've got the centralized dial, then you can change any of the information on the left or the right of the screen. The next one you have is Sport, which you tend to get on most cars as well. I think it's probably my least favorite, even though it looks nice. This is one of the few cars where I think Classic actually really suits the entire look of the car. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Which one do you prefer out of these three designs? Now, those of you who've seen the C43 review are probably thinking what I thought, that this looks a bit of a step back from what that car had, and indeed the new A-Class, and you would be right. This particular UI is a little bit behind. It's still what the E-Class had compared to what the newer AMGs have. So we saw a little teaser of the A35 recently. That car also had the Super Sport display as the C43 had. So even that car is a bit more up to date than this, which is a bit bizarre because this is the most expensive of that entry-level AMG family. So you really want it to have up-to-date UI, which it kind of doesn't. Equally, you haven't got like the nice new touchpad here, which fair enough, the C43 didn't have either. But it's just these little things that are irking me at the moment that I can see maybe will just wind up in cars 6 months down the line. But these are things I'm nitpicking with. It's just UI design I'm talking about and a bit of interaction. And this car, compared to the C43, has a lot of things that the S-Class has as well, which is going to be a big benefit to anyone buying this. And that's where you start to get bang for your buck. You can set the seat heating balance, and you can get massaging function in some countries in the world as well. That's all doable in E Coupe. You've got ionization, just like the S-Class, in terms of having a Mercedes-Benz perfume come through the air conditioning system. Then you guys might remember something called energizing comfort that was in the S-Class, and I called it something that you would expect to have in the highest level of car. The E Coupe has it, and what it does is it has different settings that pair various parts of the car's technology to give you a different ambience in the car. So for example, we've got one here called Refresh, which changes the car's lighting to green. It changes the smell within the car through the aircon, and it gives you a different ambience within the car. Some of them even link in music, for example, or some have driving training such as muscle stimulation, muscle relaxation, balance, etc. Now, of course, I love talking about ambient lighting because it looks so damn cool in these cars. And I'll put my favorite one on. This car has got the 64 different options, along with the multicolored ambient lighting in the latest E-classes. So Red Moon is quite cool. You've got like blue and red, which shift in between different areas. Of course, now the vents are lighted as well, just like we saw in the AMG GT 4-door. So that looks really good. Seating position is nice and low. I would have loved to have gotten the AMG Performance seats because I'm a big advocate of those. They're not an option in the E53, which is a shame, whereas they are available in the C43. But conversely, you can't get them in the S63, so maybe this is further along the luxury line than the C is. Just like the C43, you also get a wireless charging mat inside the car, so you can just pop your phone in there and it will begin charging if compatible. So jumping in the back, that's my seating position. I've still got fairly decent leg room. I'm 5'10", I've got decent enough height. The seats seem okay. They're quite huggy. I don't know how many miles I'd be comfortable doing it. It's spacious, don't get me wrong, but the seats just feel a little bit small to me. Boot space seems fairly decent in the car, maybe a little bit restrictive in terms of the entry, however. You can get golf clubs in it and all the rest of it though. But now let's deal with the bit I'm most afraid of with any new AMG engine, and that is the startup. especially with downsizing and hybridization and all the rest of it. Plus, this 53 series at the moment comes with no performance exhaust option. Blasphemy. I know. It's literally nowhere, in no country. There's no mention of it. I don't know whether it's coming. Nobody at AMG seems to want to talk about it either. I don't know what the case is with that. Maybe it sounds good as it is. Maybe, I don't know. We'll have to see when we drive it. But let's see first what the startup is like. I'm going to start it in comfort. Well, that was very, very boring indeed. Let's try Sport Plus and see if that helps. Well, that was a bit better. I quite like that, actually. Let's try that again. Yeah, it's definitely got a bit more aggression, similar to the C43, so that's not too bad. Now let's see what it revs like in comfort. Sounds a bit better than what the C43 did in comfort, actually. Let's see what Sport Plus sounds like. It actually sounds a lot better, but to get the sound, you have to be very direct and sharp with how you press the accelerator to rev. But when you get it right, it sounds good. But I guess we'll have to see what it sounds like on the drive. So let's get to it and see what this new drivetrain is like in this higher end of entry-level AMGs. Right, so driving my first ever 53 AMG. This is going to be very interesting. As we said, the car's got 429 brake horsepower, 520 newton meters of torque, and then that's supplemented by the EQ power within the car, and that's the electric motor. So the car has your traditional gas turbo, and it's got an electric turbo as well. So the way that works is, the goal is to give you immediate response whenever you put your foot down on the throttle. That's what AMG says. And basically that's achieved by the electric turbocharging taking charge of the first lot of revs. So as soon as you take off, the electric motor will give you the torque and the power immediately and give time to the gas turbocharger to then spool up, and then you don't get any lag. But let's see how well that works in reality. I'm going to shift the car into Sport Plus. Wow, that's pretty impressive. So it feels actually very similar to what, oh God, the E53 feels like in power delivery. Now, of course, the E63 has the V8 bi-turbo 4-litre with the turbos nestled within the cylinder bank, so there is no delay in that turbo engine. It feels very natural. And this kind of feels like that. Of course, you haven't got that same push of 900 newton meters of torque, but what you do get, if I slow down again, and I put my foot down, there's an immediate pickup of speed. Yeah, that's impressive. So we can immediately see the benefits of that EQ Power Plus system within the car, and it really destroys any element of lag in the engine. The other thing is it's completely indiscernible in terms of whenever it activates. It's also quite cool seeing the power and charge meters shift between each other. Never seen that in an AMG before. But yeah, it's really indiscernible. You're not sure at what point the EQ is activating or being used, and that's what you want. You want it to fade away into the background. So if I shifted the car then back into comfort and we went into sailing mode, then the EQ takes charge there and handles the idle speed of the engine as well. So it's all quite clever. So in the lower speeds and the mid speeds, it feels really powerful. But I want to know what it feels like when you start getting up to the upper echelon of speed. And I think it starts to feel weak further on. But one good thing is, no matter which part of the red range you are on, and you want to deliver power, the EQ gives you the torque immediately. Now the 0 to 60 is meant to be 4.5 seconds. So let's give that a try now. See what this is like when you take off. Certainly is pretty quick, but it is not by any stretch of the imagination 63 quick, but way faster than E400. So let's get on to the handling now. It's of course a 4MATIC Plus car, which means all the power can either go to the front or the rear as the car detects it needs it. But let's start with the steering first. It's a variable rack in this, so when you're driving in comfort, it's easier to turn the wheel. As you pick up speed, and like now, it's hardening. Like the C43, steering's okay. It's nothing as communicative or pointy. I think pointy is the right word, as you would get in an E53 or a C63S Coupe. I really feel like you feel the weight of the car compared to those. Now, if we chuck the car into manual with Sport Plus, I want to test the 9-speed gearbox shift changes while we're doing the handling aspect. So far so good on the shifts. As far as the handling goes, the car, it's a tough one. It does feel quite boaty, if I'm honest with you. The shifts are pretty good though, and the 9-speed is working nicely. Oh, I feel the weight. I want the performance seats right now. Again, you get those F1 style red flashy lights like in the C43, which is nice. But the gearbox seems to be doing really well actually. Now the fact that the car is feeling its weight is not at all surprising to me, because where the E63 doesn't feel this way, it feels quite light, it feels nimble and agile. And the reason for that is it's got dynamic engine mount, so the weight of the car, the main weight, moves with the car, whereas this hasn't got that. So it's not as clever. But that being said, I really like to compare this to what we had previously in something like an E500, where you would never dream of doing anything like this. In fact, you would be very, very scared. And the same is true of the E400 and the E450 in the current lineup. That's when this feels so much better. The 4MATIC Plus, it's clever enough to know when you need grip, and the overall result is a pretty satisfying drive for what is mainly more of a luxurious entry-level AMG. And that, I think, leads us now onto sound. So I'm going to put it back into comfort for a minute. Now, of course, no performance exhaust in any 53 model. I don't know whether the GT53 will be different, but certainly none of these cars have them. So I can't open the flaps and show you what that would sound like in daily driving. So essentially, the only choice you have if you're going to use either Eco mode or Comfort mode, or Sport Plus, is having the flaps closed. So whereas our main mode generally, when I speak to most AMG owners, we like to use Comfort with the exhaust on in daily driving. You can't do that in this E53, you can do it in the C43. So at the moment it's just quiet, it's just behaving like a normal petrol engine. There's no character to it at all. Even if I put my foot down, nothing at all. So really, if you want to have fun, you need to put it into Sport Plus, where things get a little bit more interesting. And then you get more rumble, you get a bit of a fart at the end of the rev limiter. To be fair, it is quite similar to what you guys heard in the C43 as well. I think the C43 is a bit louder personally, but that might just be the length of the car. This could really use an exhaust system. So let me just switch it back into comfort now. So in terms of daily driving, this car is very good. So as you expect, with the addition of EQ, The MPG is very good. Even with the more excitable driving I've been doing, I've been averaging very easily 30 MPG, which is pretty damn impressive in a 429 brake horsepower car. And I think if you were sensible doing long journeys, you could get well above that. So that is it's a plus point immediately. The other side of it, the refinement in the car in terms of the technology, the trims, the way that you can spec it, if you spec it right inside, the way the car rides on its suspension, it's all very reminiscent to me of S Coupe, which is a good thing because the old E Coupe was so far away from S-Class or CL that you would never mention them both in the same sentence. But this is quite close. So there's a big plus point here that you perhaps don't get at all in the C43. As I said at the start, we must not be critical for the sake of being critical when new niches or new models are brought out. But what we must absolutely be critical about is whether a car nails the purpose that it was built for, especially with regards to a car being an AMG. So the E53 handles the look side of being an AMG very, very well, and I would say it's possibly the best looking of the entry-level AMGs at the moment, at least until the A35 comes out and the GT53. It looks elegant and mean at the same time from every angle, which is what you are expecting of this car. In terms of the duality that makes an AMG, it does the Mercedes-Benz side exceedingly well. Someone coming out of an old E500 boat will feel very at home, and they won't lose anything coming into the E53 when you're driving it normally. If anything, this car matches the S Coupe pound for pound in all the areas that really count. With regards to power, the car delivers power in a much more smooth and natural way than the C43 does. It doesn't strain at any point of the revs. Only when you're exceeding a certain amount of speed, which you wouldn't normally do, only then does it feel strained. Otherwise, it delivers power much smoother and in a more confident way than the C43 does. And maybe that is a reason for someone to upgrade by itself. With regards to the handling, as with most entry-level AMGs, it's not something that's going to be super memorable for you. But the main culprit here for me is the strange omission of the AMG performance exhaust that is available in every other AMG and entry-level AMG currently. Only the 53 series misses it. Will it get it one day? I don't know. I can't seem to find out anything about this. But because of that being lacking, it lacks that duality that most other AMGs have. And because of that, it'll end up alienating that part of the AMG customer base who really do value their sound quality within a car. But perhaps I'm being a little hard on the car's sound, because at full chat on Sport Plus it sounds as loud as the C43 with performance exhaust. So the main issue is daily driving, because you can't open the exhaust in comfort. But I have found a solution to that. So 53 owners, if you go into individual mode, set the engine to dynamic and everything else to comfort. So what happens in that scenario is you've opened up the exhaust in terms of volume and the nice little pops and cracks, but because the gearbox is clever, eventually it will learn that you like to drive slower in individual, and thus you won't get a jerky response from the throttle, and it's a really nice way of mimicking the exhaust being open in comfort. For everyone else who's left after that, it makes a pretty damn good daily, even if it is a bit on the expensive side, because it does the luxury thing so well, and it does have a very powerful feeling throttle delivery thanks to the EQ system. In terms of what it replaces, in terms of the cars in the past, it's such a massive step forward, it's hard to believe that it's just one generation ahead. So in that sense, I'd much rather have this exist than an E500 by Mercedes-Benz. I've been harsh and I've compared this car to the 63s, but if you compare it to the 400 or the 450 in the current lineup, that is when you see how much of an AMG this is. The greatest part of this car has to be the addition of the EQ electric motor, the EQ power. And if nothing else, this gives me hope for AMG powertrains in the future using this EQ system, because you can see the massive difference between the C43 and the E43, how this just feels more natural. All it needed was more drama. So I'd love to see AMG give this treatment to an engine they built themselves from the ground up. And that sounds like it's going to be the next A45 with EQ power and an engine of their own, and that I'm really, really excited for. Well guys, thank you so much for watching this review on the E53. I hope it was informative. I will be looking at the CLS 53 at some point just to see how that differs at all. And of course, we've got a whole host of entry-level AMGs coming into the future. The most excited of which we are, of course, of the A35, which I keep talking about in this review. So obviously I'm excited about it. So as you always do, please do like and subscribe and share this video, and I'll see you again soon.